Hello there, I'm Ashna Harjani, engineer. You're watching Mirror Now. First up, a top story. Meanwhile, now, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has called on Russian President Vladimir Putin to meet with him and seek a resolution to the crisis. The call comes as the country is facing a sharp spike in violence in and around the territory held by Russia-backed rebels and increasingly dire warnings that Russia plans to invade. The Ukrainian president proposed the meeting while he was attending the Munich Conference. There was no immediate response from the Kremlin. And despite Russia maintaining its stance of having no intentions of waging war against Ukraine, the West still doesn't seem convinced. Now, United States has warned Russia of unprecedented sanctions if Russia invades Ukraine. Vice President Kamala Harris, as well as the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, reiterated that Russia will face massive consequences if it chooses to invade its neighbor. And in fact, President Joe Biden has also said that he has reason to believe that Russia will invade Ukraine in the coming days.
And do you have any indication about whether President Putin has made a decision on whether to invade? Do you feel confident that he hasn't made that decision already?
As of this moment, I'm convinced he's made the decision. We have reason to believe that. I don't think he is remotely contemplating using nuclear weapons. But I do think I think he is focused on trying to convince the world that he has the ability to change the dynamics in Europe in a way that he cannot. But I don't, how much of it is a cover for just saying we're just doing exercises and there's more than that, I just can't, it's hard to read his mind.
And meanwhile, despite the warnings from the US and NATO, Russia has continued its missile drills and military exercises in the Black Sea. And while in Ukraine, heavy shelling in the eastern regions has led to the death of one Ukrainian soldier, the eastern regions of Ukraine have many pro-Russian separatist groups that are involved in sporadic battles within the Ukrainian military. Ukraine has blamed Moscow of escalating the conflict by instigating internal strife. A separatist leader even claimed that his group had begun evacuating civilians from the area to Russia. And External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar once again batted for diplomacy and emphasized that the ways to reconcile amid the rising tensions on the Russian-Ukrainian border. His statement came on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference.
We are today in a far more globalized world, and that means a far more interdependent world, and also an interpenetrative world, which is you have, you can say others, even competitors in your national space, in your economy, in your society. You do business with people with whom you can have a major conflict of interest. So, to my mind, it's a far more paradoxical world. It's not so clean and neat as it used to be in the 70s and 80s. It calls for a very different kind of approach.
And the former Indian diplomat is joining us on the broadcast for an insight into the prevailing conflict of Ukraine and Russia. Thank you, sir, for joining us. My first question to you is, what do you think this conflict, what is the impact on India? What is the direct impact on India of the ongoing?
Well, there are several, I think, direct impacts on India. One, of course, is, I would say, geopolitical. This kind of tension in Europe between Russia on one hand and the West, US and Ukraine on the other, doesn't augur well for the peace in Europe and also indirectly also for us. So that, I think, is one of the major things. The US has been concentrating on its strategic objectives in the Indo-Pacific. We wonder whether its involvement or its preoccupation now with this Ukraine crisis will detract it from its main objectives. At least that is what one has been noticing last few years in the Indo-Pacific. And that has direct implications for us, as we all are now aware that India is part of the Quad, and India is very much is a strong supporter of the concept of the Indo-Pacific. Indians have now growing presence in Ukraine too, just as we have our long friendship and very close bonds with Russia. In Ukraine, we have close to 20,000 Indians, about 18,000 students, growing trade, a lot of exchanges with Ukraine, and that is obviously now under threat. So I think this is a direct interest. Also, oil prices are going up as a result of this global tension now caused by Ukraine crisis.
Most definitely.
And as Foreign Minister just now mentioned, Dr. Jaishankar, in the interpenetrated, interdependent world, we need to have a new approach. This kind of military tension between Russia and the West on the Ukrainian border, I think would not help us at all. So I think the situation on the whole for us is certainly not good. And as we have been all along saying last several weeks, that India looks for a peaceful, diplomatic, negotiated kind of settlement in this present Ukraine crisis. And we have been also saying that the legitimate security interests of all concerned should be taken into account. We have also emphasized the implementation of the Minsk agreement, which is at least a body of agreement available to all parties, and the Normandy format, which could help in finding some kind of breakthrough or solution in this very intractable kind of situation which obtains today.
Most definitely. Sir, earlier you were mentioning about the students in Ukraine, Indian students in Ukraine. Do you think India should intensify its effort to evacuate them?
Well, if the situation continues to be grave and if there is danger to Indian students and Indian nationals in Ukraine, then I think that is the course of action we will need to adopt. Up till now, till a few days ago, everybody thought that things were not really going beyond control, and overall there was a situation of calm, and therefore we were not really pushing for the evacuation of Indians. But I think in the last 4 or 5 days, it seems, I think it will be advisable to get them back, particularly those Indian students who are in the eastern areas, cities like Kharkiv or Kiev or Odessa, or some of the regions which are very close to the Russian border. But I think those who wish to come back, and I think the government of India has now arranged 3 flights per week to get them back. I think it's a very timely step.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the broadcast and getting us all those insights on the prevailing Ukraine and Russia crisis.